Hello, everyone. We are about to start our first official set of notes on human anatomy. We did scientific investigation, which is technically part of the first unit, but this is the first set of notes that actually dives into human anatomy and physiology. So let's take a look at a few things. This is section 1.2, what we'll go over today, anatomy versus physiology. So basically, you are taking a course that's called Human Anatomy and Physiology. You really need to know the difference between the two. So when you're looking at anatomical parts or anatomy, that's where I'm going to have you memorizing things like the names of the bones or the locations of the bones or where certain organs are in the body. Names maybe of parts of the organs, like there are various pieces of the intestine that has different names or different parts of the stomach. All that would be anatomy. On the physiology side, though, that is where you're actually getting into functions and chemistry behind those functions within the part. So how do they function? What's the chemicals that work? That's physiology. Okay, so looking at this is just giving an example. When we do get to Unit 6, when we get to the skeletal system, we're going to be looking at long bones, and there are several parts to long bones that you'll need to know. Like the ends of the bones are called the epiphyses. The shaft of the bones called the diaphyses. You've got cartilage, articular cartilage at the end. So basically, you're just looking at a structure and naming all the different parts. And that is anatomy. On the other hand, another thing we'll talk about when we get to the skeletal system chapter is how your body absorbs calcium and then what the calcium is used for and how hormones control the calcium and the physiological processes behind it. So this looks really complicated right now, but when we get to that chapter, I'll simplify it for you. But basically, physiology to me is a little more complicated than anatomy. Anatomy is just straight up memorizing parts, and the physiology is where you get into a little bit of the chemistry behind it. All right, so your body also has metabolism. Now, metabolism refers to, the technical definition is all of the chemical reactions that occur inside your body, all of them. There's a misconception that people have where they say, oh, my metabolism is just how fast I can burn calories. So, if you're one of the lucky ones, you're skinny, you can eat whatever you want, and you just burn it off really quickly. Unlucky like me, I just look at food and gain weight. So, but this is really just one example of a metabolic function. It's not the only one. Metabolism and physiology go hand in hand. So as I was talking about this process with your bones and the calcium and the hormones, all of those are physiological processes, but they're also part of your metabolism. Okay? So we get into how insulin is pumped out of your pancreas, which is going to help with lowering blood sugar levels. That is a type of metabolism. And for example, like in your cells and your mitochondria, how the mitochondria are able to create ATP, which is that energy that your cells need to do work. That is an example of metabolism. So metabolism, yes, it does include how quick your body burns the calories and to get the energy out of it, but that's just one example, okay? All right, so this is something that goes back to your biology. Hopefully you remember a little bit of this. Your body is structurally organized, so we're gonna start at the smallest level, which are the chemical level. And of course, all the chemicals, like when we talked about in biology, if you remember, carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, which we'll talk a little bit about in Unit 2. But that would be the chemical level. Now, if you look over here to the left of the screen, it says smallest parts. They are the simplest, and they use the least amount of energy. Now, you have cells. Of course, that's the most basic unit in your body and living things. And then those cells group together to make tissues, and the tissues group together to make organs. The organs group together to make the various organ systems, and you put all the organ systems together and you get the organism, and in our case, we're talking about humans. So as you go down that list, each level gets bigger. And as each level gets bigger, they get more complex. And the more complex they are, the more energy they're going to use. So, the entire human body is going to use more energy than, let's say, individual tissues. Okay, I mean, it kind of makes sense that the bigger you are, the more energy you're going to use. So this is just a picture, giving you kind of like the flowchart version. You've got the little blood cell there. That's an individual cell, but you put all the blood cells together, which is the second picture that shows red blood cells, and the little purple ones in the middle are technically white blood cells, but they're always stained purple because if you put them under a microscope and try to view white blood cells with a white light, you're not going to see them. So they have to stain them, and they usually do purple. So anyway, that's tissues. Blood is a type of tissue when you group all the cells together. In the cardiovascular system, since we're kind of in that system anyway, talking about blood, your heart, of course, is an organ. And if you put the heart and the blood vessels together, you get the organ system. So there are 11 total organ systems in the human body, and that's our goal this year, is to make it through pretty much all of them, maybe 10. I sometimes leave off the endocrine system, which is the hormone system, but it's not that we don't ever talk about it. It's that we talk about hormones as we go through the other chapters. So if I run out of time, that's usually the one I leave off because we've already talked about it, within the other systems. So, but there are a total of 11 in our body. And I have on here, know the general functions and main organs. So on this slide here, that shows you all 11 organ systems. You can see circulatory, aka cardiovascular, because depending on which textbook or whatever you're using, but they're the same system. But in the pinkish reddish box in the middle, this is where you're going to use your OpenStax anatomy textbook, the one that's online that I mentioned from the syllabus. In the syllabus is the website, but you can do a Google search for OpenStax and you'll find it. You do have to create an account, but it's free. You can pretty much download the PDF of the textbook if you have the ability to do that on your computer. And when you do that, basically it's PDF pages 22 and 23. It's in chapter 1. And those 2 pages have a summary of these 11 organ systems. There's just a little blurb about each one, just a real brief, this is what this organ system does overall, a couple of organs, gives you a picture. For right now, I just need you to have an overall idea of what each one does. The purpose of this class is to go through each system in detail, but right now you just need to know a little bit about each one. Okay, so your skeletal system is the bones, and it yields support to the body, protects organs like your rib cage protects your heart and stuff. Muscular, of course, is for movement. Nervous system is going to be communication. Things like that. So just take a look at the OpenStax textbook, page 22 and 23. That'll give you some idea of just a little bit about each one of these organ systems. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop for now. I'll make another video for this next section, homeostasis, but for right now, this is what I need you to be looking over and studying. Okay, if you have any questions, you know where to reach me.